Hi, everyone. Good evening. Sarah here from Mappy Hour. Really excited y'all are spending the night with us. Before we get too far into it, I am going to just do a few announcements. I'll make it really quick. One is we do have comments available here, so we encourage everyone to hop in there, say hello, say where you're tuning in from. We do expect everyone to be kind and curious, and there will be no tolerance of any sort of bullying or intolerance of any kind in the comments. So just so you know, we are moderating them. And as far as comments go, you are highly encouraged to drop in questions for Tommy throughout the talk, and we'll get to them at the end. Not ignoring you, we're just going to have them going on at the end, but you're welcome to put them in there at any point when they occur to you. One other thing I just wanted to share. So if you are new to Mappy Hour, we're a community of urban dwelling outdoor enthusiasts, and we do have chapters across the US. This past year, we've been doing these online talks, which has been great, but we are getting back to in real life events. We're really excited, and we're looking for new chapter leaders and ambassadors. So if that's something you think you might be interested in, we're having just like an info session next week, and everyone's invited. So last thing before we jump in, Mappy Hour is supported by some awesome sponsors. So shout out to the North Face and shout out to Sierra Nevada Brewing. I'm drinking, they have like a new hard kombucha. It's called Strange Beast. Really good. So thank you for supporting Mappy Hour and helping us make cool things happen. So those are all of my announcements, and I am so excited to be having conversation tonight with Tommy Cory. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Mappy Hour.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. So I know a lot of folks already know who you are, but I'd love if you could just quickly tell us, like, who is Tommy Cory?
So yeah, my name's Tommy, and I'm 33. I currently live in Bend, Oregon, but I'm originally from Northern California. I'm an outdoor photographer and filmmaker. And I do a lot of my work with a heavy focus on diversity and inclusion in the outdoors. I'm also a PCT thru-hiker, and that's kind of how I got into, being an outdoor photographer and doing this kind of work.
Amazing. And that's actually how I kind of discovered you a few years ago, because of your photography and your thru-hiking. So I know you're working on film now, but I wanted to start with the photography. How did you get into that? And a question we hear all the time is, how did you make that a professional endeavor? Like, how do you make that a job?
So how I got into it was, it's kind of, I can't really make it too short of a story, but basically I was a freshman in high school, and my friend's older brother was doing his senior project on portrait photography. And me and him shared the same choir class. And I had seen some of the photos he had taken of other classmen, and they were like really beautiful. And then, but the thing that had made me really want to get into photography, especially portraits, was one day he had come to class and had taken photos of this girl who was a senior as well. And as an adult now, looking back, like I could tell that this girl came from kind of like probably a kind of a troubled home life. And, she was this girl that just kind of got made fun of a lot. And she was looking at the photos that he had taken of her. And mind you, this is a choir class of like 100 kids. Okay. So this is before we're starting, like choir for the day, and we're sitting on the bleachers, and she's flipping through the pages, and I kind of take notice, and she starts kind of crying. And then all of a sudden she's full blown crying in his shoulders and saying thank you over and over. And I think for me, that moment, even as a kid, was like, oh wow, like I don't just want to take photos, like I want to take photos that mean something, whether it's to the person or to someone else. I wanted to like take portraits with a purpose. But that's what inspired me to become a photographer and to kind of do the work I do now, which is always trying to uplift people. The way I made that a career, well, let's see, that was 20 years ago. I started taking photos. It's been a long time. Yeah, I mean, I throughout my 20s, I did a lot of just like weddings and a bunch of stuff I didn't really want to do. But it's weird because I saw the photo industry before it became all, digital and Instagram and whatnot. It's kind of interesting, but through my 20s, I just was like, I don't know what I want to do with photography. I know I want to take portraits of people. I know I don't want to make them feel good. I know I want to inspire others, but like, I just don't know in what realm of photography. And then I thru-hiked the PCT in 2018, did this photo series called Hiker Trash Vogue, which we'll talk about. And that's kind of what got me into the outdoors. And so because of that, I kind of just, kind of capitalized on that momentum of, okay, well, I love the outdoors. I always have since I was a kid. I grew up near Mount Shasta. I've always been outside. I was like, oh, I didn't realize I can integrate the two things I love the most into a career. And so I just kind of ran with it. And so, yeah, now I get hired for work, but I also come up with ideas and I pitch those ideas to companies and say, hey, do you want to work with me? Let's create something. And hopefully it's something that uplifts the community and makes people feel more included.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're combining these different interests, the original love for photography and the reason that you want to do it with a love for the outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard. I mean, yeah, I think it's hard. I think it's a hard kind of, realm to get into, just art in general. Everyone's an artist now, especially with Instagram. It's so easy to create and have people see it, but it's also like, in that sense, it's also really hard. So, do I think I got lucky? No, I think I just took a chance, and I just finally had worked so hard that I was like, okay, I'm going to make this happen, whether whether people want it or not, just
sheer force of will.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, okay, it's been 20 years. I think it's time to make some money doing this.
Absolutely. Amazing. I feel like you answered all of my questions there, but I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper into some of them. So in terms of the photography you're doing now, and from what I've heard from what you were saying, you're maybe returning to what your initial vision of what you wanted to do was, and away from maybe things like wedding photography. I'd love to dive into that a little bit more. Like, are there themes that you find coming up over and over again in your photography, or themes that you really want to explore on future projects that just keep coming back to you and are part of like your vision for your work?
Yeah, I think the one resounding theme of my work is just self-love and making people feel good. I try to photograph, I think the biggest question I always get from whether it's followers or people that just want to get into photography, people aren't like, oh, what camera should I get, or like, how do you do this? People are always asking me, how do you take portraits? Like, that's what people want to know. People are always like, how do you pose people? Like, how do you make people look like that? And it's weird because I've been taking portraits since I was a kid. So for me, it just comes really natural. And I love people. I'm very extroverted. I love being around people. I thrive when I'm around others. So, and I think that really shows in my work. I think that's the thing that like people really want to know is like how to take portraits. How do you make people look like that? And it's like, I'm not making people look like anything. I'm just showing people how I view them and how I see them, how I interpret them. And hopefully through that, they get to see themselves in a different way. And I think going back to that story of how I was, inspired, I think that girl finally saw herself in a different way. And that's what made her emotional. That's what made her cry, And I think to see ourselves in someone else's eyes, I think is one of the most valuable gifts we can have as humans, especially in this society that we have set up for ourselves, which is like kind of terrible sometimes,
Yeah, not really focused on that.
Did that answer your question at all? Sorry.
Yes, and I have a follow-up question now. It's how do you take portraits, but like a little bit more specific. You were saying about helping people understand how you see them, and it sounds like in a really loving and supportive way. How do you do that? Is that when you're setting up the photo shoot? Is that while you're taking the photos? Like, is there something you like actually do when you're communicating, or when you're, I'm not a photographer, so I don't know the exact language around this process, but how do you do that? Because that sounds like an incredible skill.
Yeah, there's not really a process beforehand. It's more spending time with the person, and like, you know, once me getting to know someone, if I'm photographing someone for the first time, I've never met them, like the first, you know, it takes me an hour, sometimes a couple hours to like get used to them. They have to get used to me. You know, it's because it's really about figuring out the individual you're photographing. You know, it's like, how am I going to make this person not look good? How am I going to make them feel good? You know, it's, for me, it's not like, I don't care how they look. Like, I want it, like, I care how they feel during the process. I care how they feel looking at a photo of them, you know, afterward. So it's a matter of really just engaging with them, feeling out their personality. I'm very silly behind the camera. I joke a lot. I yell at people a lot in like a funny way, you know, like I like to be like, hey, stop complaining. You're fine. Let's get this over with.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think it's all a matter of just making it like, you know, a lot of the work I do can be really serious, but behind it, we're just having fun, trying to create something beautiful. And I think by being silly and letting know people like, this is, I'm here for you, not for me, is like really important.
Yeah, I love that. Wow, cool. So yeah, I mean, when I was looking over like all of your work and kind of like your artist statement, I saw that you mentioned self-love, and I'm wondering if you can maybe define what that means to you. And kind of a follow-up question for that is like, how does that fit into the outdoors? Because that obviously is like your space now too. So where do you see those things intersecting, and how does that show up?
So yeah, I mean, that's, you know, I read through these questions when you sent them to me. I don't know if I'm supposed to do that.
Yeah.
But that was the one that kind of stumped me. And because I feel like asking what is self-love is kind of like asking, like, what is the meaning of life? And I think, you know, in the sense that we're all individuals, we all come from different places. We all have different people in our lives, some more or less, you know, we all have different paths, and self-love looks so different for all of us. And I think, I mean, the best way I can explain it for myself is like, I find a lot of self-love by showing others love. Like, I'm very, you know, like, that's why I take portraits. That's why I like to make people feel good. That's why, I mean, I love cooking. It's like my favorite thing in the world. I cook for people all the time. If I cook for you, that means I love you. Like, that is my version of self-love, is, you know, by making other people feel good. Like, that makes me feel good. But you know, that's not what it looks like for everyone. So it's a really hard question, but I think when it comes to like kind of that interconnectedness with, you know, self-love in the outdoors, I think any person that goes outside, whether you're going on a 3-mile hike or climbing a mountain or hiking 3,000 miles on a trail, or, you know, riding a bike thousands of miles or whatever, or even if you were literally just going to sit on a park bench, I think anyone that goes outside is expressing some sort of self-love. That is self-care, just going outside, no matter what you're doing. We go outside when we're happy. We go outside when we're sad. I think going outside, just being outside, no matter where you are, that is like the ultimate act of self-love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually was thinking about that question for myself as well when I was writing it and reading, you know, a little bit more about your work. And I feel like we've seen so much like self-care this year, and there are so many different ways that shows up. But what you're saying, like going outside and just taking, for me personally, taking the time to be like, I don't need to be answering an email right now. I don't need to be like tapped into this like crazy productivity mindset that is like pushed upon us all the time, is like a version of self-love for myself, which I don't know, I'm saying it out loud, it seems so simple, but I think it is really powerful. Yeah. So how did you get into the outdoors? Speaking of our favorite place.
So I grew up in Redding in Northern California, and it's about like an hour south of Mount Shasta. Also pretty close to Mount Lassen. There's a lot of lakes around. So we just grew up going outside. I mean, summers were spent in the mountains, go fishing, hiking, camping all the time. That was our favorite thing to do. So yeah, I just grew up being outside. And for me, being outside as a kid was kind of like a safety zone. I got made fun of a lot as a kid, and I hated school. So to be outside with like my dad and my brothers and like, people I felt that loved me, that was like a really important thing for me to experience as a kid.
Do you still feel like the outdoors is a place where you can go maybe to like escape or to be with people that you do love and, want to spend time with? Is that still part of kind of how you enjoy it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it can be a weird dichotomy when you do it for work as well, but it never feels like I'm never outside working and be like, well, God, I wish I wasn't here right now. It's always,
Right.
always great. And so, I mean, like I'm outside all the time because like I have to be outside for work. And then when I'm not working, I still want to be outside. So I'm like, whether I'm going by myself or I'm going with a couple of friends camping or backpacking, I just can't, I never get enough of it.
That's amazing. I agree.
Yeah.
Except when I get really cold, then I'm like, all right, I can go inside.
See, I can't year round. I love sleeping in the cold. It's great.
That's awesome. So, okay, so you grew up outside. Have you always been backpacking? Was the PCT like this dream of yours forever? Did you read a book and then decide to do it randomly? Like, what's your story there?
It's not that cool of a story, honestly. So my brother thru-hiked the PCT in 2011. And when he did it, I was like, I would never do that. That sounds terrible. And then I lived with this kid, my former roommate, Andrew. He had hiked the AT when we were living together. Like he had hiked it years prior, and he was planning on a thru hike of the PCT in 2017. So he kept like asking me to go because he knew my brother had done it. And I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible. And then one day after a lot of wine, I was like, okay, I'll go. And I'm kind of I have a lot of anxiety around like canceling plans. I'm like,
had to do it. You really had no choice.
They know I'll show up, and they know like if Tommy says yes, he's like coming. So yeah, I had agreed to do it, and then I went on one training hike, which was 50 miles around the Three Sisters outside of Bend, and then I did 900 miles of the PCT in 2017, and then I quit and went back and did a full thru hike in 2018.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, so questions. I have a few questions on that. So when you were taking that break, when you came off the PCT, how did you train mentally and physically to be able to do it fully the second time?
Oh, I mean, that period in between was terrible.
Yeah.
I was extremely depressed. I was really sad that I had quit. All I could think about was going back. And it was kind of like kind of like a dark time in my life, honestly. And that's what made me, like the day I went back to the PCT, I promised myself every day, I'm going to ask myself, where else do you want to be? And if the answer is ever somewhere other than here, then you can quit again, or maybe you're done with thru hiking. And I asked myself, even on the worst days, even the days when I was like, hiking up snowy mountain passes and just like miserable and be like, God, this sucks. I'd be like, where else do you want to be? And I'd be like, well, I'd rather be here. So, can you ask, I knew I was getting a point with that.
The question was like how you went from that first year to the second year and kind of the process, like physically and mentally to be able to finish it.
Physically, I didn't do shit. I just worked and saved my money. Like literally, I didn't train at all. Mentally, I just thought about it every day. I just thought, I can't wait to go back. I know I want to do it. And I'm so happy I quit the first time and experienced that lull in between of like really missing it, because when I went back, I was just like, man, like, I don't want to do anything else. Like, I never want this to be over. Like, it was just like, the best experience, the best people. I did an awesome photo project that I loved, that like felt like for once in my life I had like created something that felt like me. It was just I just felt finally at like my purest form. I was 30 when I thru hiked, and I felt finally in 30 years like I am at my purest form of human right now, and that's a really like just invaluable thing to have.
Yeah, amazing. Like I wonder how many people actually get to feel that in their lives. So speaking of the photo project, this is how I learned about you. I read an article about Hiker Trash Vogue. Will you do like high level, what it is, and then just how did this even start? And yeah, what was it? Or is it, I guess? Yeah.
So Hiker Trash Vogue was a photo series of long distance hikers pretending to be high fashion models. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a fashion photographer. And then as I got older and like, I did a stint of college in San Francisco and worked with fashion kids. And I was like, I do not want to be a fashion photographer. Just not my scene. And yeah. And so the way it started was I was about 3 weeks in on the PCT, and I was with some of my friends. We had gotten a house to take a day off, and I had just said, hey, everyone should grab a piece of gear and we'll pretend like we're models. We'll be like hiker models. It'd be funny. So I did that, and then I posted it and tagged all the companies we used and whatnot. And it just like blew up. Like, I mean, I think I started the PCT with like, I don't know, a couple thousand followers. And then I ended with like almost 20,000. It just was crazy. It was like really experienced the power of the internet, which was like kind of scary. Yeah. And so it was like, I wasn't going out there trying to do anything special. I just brought my camera and said, I'm going to document this the way I know how and the best I can. And then I started that, and like, this is me. This makes sense. Like so I did that the rest of the trail, and it was great.
Why do you think that resonated with people?
I think people were seeing the trail in a different way. Like there's tons of photographers that hike the PCT, tons of really talented photographers. And everyone like kind of has, like, you can look at a certain photo and know like, hey, that's this person, that's that person, whatnot. But I don't know. There's so many people that thru hike now. It gets like, there's bound to be some, I guess, repetitiveness. And I think this was just something different is the only thing I could think of. And I mean, I had the experience in photo. People were getting, it was hyper focused on, the hikers, not the mountains. I'm not like, I like scenery, but I don't like scenery without people in it. It just, for me, I'm like, where's that mountain? I have no idea what mountain that is. Right. There's a person in there. I remember exactly like what we talked about that day, what we ate. Like, I thrive, like I said, like I thrive around people. And for me, memories are people. So when people are in my photos, it's a way of me documenting something I'd never want to forget. So, and I think people hadn't really seen any photo projects that were really focused on the hiker, which is the best part of the trail,
Right.
Yeah, and stuff are cool, but the people is like what makes you like, what makes me want to go hike again.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you feel like by doing this project and finding subjects that you were able to connect with people in like a different way or a more unique way? Or do you think it would have been similar if you hadn't been taking the photos?
I think it was a very unique way of interacting with people. It was cool to have people come up to me and be like, "Oh, are you that hiker? Are you the Hiker Trash Vogue guy?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Are you taking any pictures later?" It's like kind of funny, but to like have people approach you wanting their photo taken, like sometimes can be annoying because sometimes I'm like, I just walked like 30 miles. I don't feel like
right.
talking. Yeah. To like have your work be seen and like people know it. There's also like a trust that lies in that of them knowing your work. And that was the first time I really experienced that. Like, oh, people know who I am. People know my work. Like people are recognizing me, not because of just Instagram. They're recognizing my work.
Yeah.
So it was always like, oh, your other PCT hiker is like, oh, you're Twerk. Like that's my trail name. They're like, oh, they referenced my work. And that for the first time in my life, I was meeting strangers and they were referencing my work. And that was just like an experience I was like, never thought I'd have. So for me, that was like awesome. And then, like, I mean, I would photograph the people I'd hike with. I'd photograph people when I'd get to camp, and just, that was a really cool way to interact. And because, like I said, I can meet someone once, snap a photo of them, and then I look back on that photo, be like, oh, I remember exactly what mile marker we camped at. I remember how many miles I hiked that day. I know exactly, like, I can probably remember where that person lived, like what their trail name was, what their real name was, like
all the things. Yeah. And this isn't really a question, just a thought. It's like so interesting how being offline and on the trail and in community, and then your online presence taking off at the same time, and like how those things are interacting is a very different thru-hiker story. I feel like I've heard a lot of thru-hiker stories, and not that many have like this digital part that kind of like comes back to feed the on-trail experience.
Yeah.
Just interesting. Yeah.
It is kind of weird because, like, you're out there, but then you're like updating, your Instagram because you're like excited about. For me, like, I was just want to show my work right now, like have to show people. So, but it is kind of weird.
No judgment. It was like just interesting because I feel like so many people now are keeping journals and sharing stories and updating people in ways that probably that wasn't part of the experience.
Yeah.
Long ago. All right. Before we move on from the PCT, any like crazy PCT stories, like something unexpected that happened that you can share?
I mean, I had a mountain lion in camp one night. That was scary.
Yeah, it sounds awful.
Yeah, that was terrible. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
You just hide in your tent? Like, what's the protocol?
I was already in my tent, and it came into camp at like midnight and was like doing. Have you ever heard one scream before?
No, I'm an East Coaster, so
we
don't have those.
Sounds like a woman being strangled. Like, it's so terrifying. So it did that for a couple of minutes and ran down the hill, and then I couldn't sleep the rest of the night, and it was just it was the worst night of my life.
Were there other people in camp at the same time, or just you?
One other person, and she did not hear it because she had earplugs and also had hiked like some ridiculous amount of miles into camp, so it was just like dead out. And in the morning, I asked her about it. She's like, "What mountain lion?" I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
You almost died.
I was like the only one that heard it. Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. Wow. All right. So back to kind of that initial, I don't know if you call it an artist statement, but just like your reason for your work and uplifting others. Has that transformed over time, like the way that you see your photography enabling that, or being a part of people's own, exploration of self-love, or whatever that might mean in terms of uplifting an individual or even a community? Or do you feel like that's been part of it since that amazing story when you were 13 and you realized that you wanted it to be part of your photography?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually working on a book right now that's going to be 20 years of work. And so I'm going back and looking at a lot of old work, I shot film for 7 years, a lot of film work and stuff I was doing when I was a kid. And I see the same things in that work as I do now, just in the sense that I just wanted these kind of just really genuine images of people. I don't like people to be too photoshopped, or like, people complain about their blemishes, and I'm like, I'm not going to take them out. That's who you are. That's what's on your face. Like, I don't want to change that. I don't like, I'm not, I'm not in the business for lying to people, like, this is who you are. That's how I want you to look. Like, I think you look great. You look beautiful. My work is about self-love, self-acceptance. And I see a lot of that in my work as a kid, which is funny because, like, as a kid, I wasn't like, that moment I was like, yeah, I want to make people feel like that. But then I was like, oh, I also just want to take rad pictures and be like a cool photographer, like I was 13. Yeah. So like when I was taking photos as a kid, I wasn't like hyper focused on that. But it's funny. I look back now and I was like, oh, that was always there. That's always been there. That's something that's probably never going to change. And my work has evolved in a lot of different ways. You know, I've done concept art, I've done nude photography, I've done Hiker Trash Vogue. I did this this photo series when I was 23 called the Self-Worth Project, which focused on people's like insecurities, and you know, it focused on stories of, you know, whether it was body images stuff or like relationships or illnesses. It was just like whatever an insecurity looks like. And then I did speaking engagements where I had people who posed for me speak on their subjects. And yeah, so like that message has always been there. It's always instilled in my work in some way, whether the photo's ridiculous or not. It's there because I want it to be, and you know, because I want the person to feel loved. I want them to feel seen and heard and beautiful. And yeah.
And we're talking about photography right now, but I know you recently got into film. So what is the project that you're doing and how does this fit in? And I guess like I'm asking like 3 questions right now, but you know, with film, like, are there ways that you're able to uplift people in maybe a slightly different way because it's a different medium?
Yeah. Which one do you want me to answer first?
I know, sorry. Let's spread them out. Okay, so rewind. So you recently got into film. Can you tell us about your project?
Yes. I was like,
I have so many questions.
No, it's great. I love those questions. Yeah, my film series is focused on individuals who are part of the outdoor industry. And it's just basically stories of who they are. You know, it's not so much of, oh, why do you like going outside? It's like, why do you go outside? Like, why do you stay outside? Like, what has kept you there? Why do you keep seeking the outdoors? Like, it's the story of who people are, and the outdoors. Like, it's like, why do you like the outdoors? Like, we get that. That story's been told. It's like the really intimate look into people's lives. And so like the first few films, you know, I've done one on mental health. I've done one on body positivity, on racism in the outdoors. I, you know, did one on a girl who is undergoing cancer treatment right now and continues to hike, and how that's healing for her. The next ones I have coming up is a long distance hiker who lives with HIV, a woman with a rare muscle disorder who is in a wheelchair and has no mobility in her legs or her arms. And then the one following is a guy who is a little person and a surfer, which is a disability in itself, you know? So it's all these range of topics that that show different people outside, but not just so much race, color, size, whatever, but the ability that lies in the human that I'm exploring. You know, not everyone can hike 3,000 miles. So it's kind of the very interpersonal relationship between the human and the outdoors, and how their story has brought them there.
That's amazing. All right. So my second question, well, now I have another question for you. How did you find your subjects, and how did you kind of figure out who was going to be part of this series? And, you know, I just watched one of someone from Georgia, and obviously you're in the Pacific Northwest. So how did you connect with these people?
Well, I mean, I guess when I kind of started getting a following when I was hiking the PCT, I started connecting more with other people doing other outdoorsy things. You know, like I'm kind of a one-trick pony. I backpack, and that's kind of that's as much as I do. But I'm like really entranced by people that do other things outdoors, and whether they do them well or not, I'm intrigued by people that like to climb or like to go run 20 miles or like to just, I don't know, whatever it is. I just am intrigued by people's outdoor story. So when I was thinking of doing this project back in December, I started making a list of just people I'd followed on Instagram. And I made a list of like 75 people, and I did probably like 50 Zoom interviews to like get to know these people for like an hour, talk to them, get to hear a little bit more about the story, see if it was a good fit, see if there was a connection. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into making a film other than, do you have a good story? You know, it's like, do we connect? Like, do you feel comfortable with me? Like that's the big thing, like, could you spend 6 days with me without killing me? Then great, let's do it, but
yeah.
So I kind of vetted people first, and then I narrowed that down to about 30. And have filmed 9, 6 have been released. I have 3 more. So right now there'll be a total in 12, but I am working on doing more by the end of the year. And I want to make a big film that showcases all the different individuals by next year, to kind of just show the range of stories and abilities and just the different people that exist within our community.
Yeah, amazing. And one of the other questions from before was just like, you've obviously been working in photography for so long. What was it like transitioning into film, and how did, a change in medium allow you to do your art and tell stories in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, getting into film was so the filmmaking part was different, difficult in, sound. You're working with sound, you're working with making a film is like, it's complicated in a lot of ways, but shooting it was easy. Like picking up a camera and I feel like my films are kind of an extension of my work, in the sense that it's like, now my images are just moving, and that's all it is. And now I have to tell a story like that. And I love telling stories. So side note, I have been since I was a little kid, always and forever obsessed with Oprah Winfrey. If you watch the Oprah show, she interviewed literally everyone. But the thing I was always fascinated about her when I was a kid, even, and still to today, she just interviewed all types of people. She interviewed adulterers and rapists, and then celebrities and athletes, and just all the widest range of people. But the thing that was fascinating to me about Oprah was she always talked to the people exactly the same way, which was without judgment. Yeah. And I always found that really fascinating, even as a kid. And so now that I'm doing this project and I'm interviewing people, I call it a visual podcast, because it's literally a 2-hour interview that I make into a 10-minute film that's just visually stunning, and I tell a story. And it's literally this work is really, it's inspired by my love of Oprah, but also my photography and just the want to give people a different way to tell their story. It's not so much, oh, here's a photo I took of you, now I'll just write an IG caption. It's you actually get to talk. You have 10 minutes to tell the world who you are. And I think that in itself is, wow, it's been, all 6 of the films I've released so far made all 6 of them cry, and it was really good feeling.
That's your metric for success.
But man, I can't tell you, there's the hardest part of making the film is sending them the film for the first time, and just that God, I hope they don't hate it. I hope this exceeds their expectations. I hope that it just makes them feel how I've always wanted to make people feel in my work, which is just beautiful. So did that answer the question?
That was amazing. Yes, that was amazing. It all fits in, right? With it, even from what you were saying, the very first question, so it is Pride. So I wanted to ask, specifically on the topic of LGBTQ plus visibility in the outdoors. Mm-hmm. How do you think the industry is doing as a whole? And I'm going to kind of add a second part to this question. Is there any one, whether it's an individual or a company, that you think is doing it really well?
Yeah. I think there are, companies that I work for, that I've done work with, especially companies that have helped fund my films, I think are amazing. I go into it saying, hey, I have this list of people, whether it's a person of color, LGBTQ, or someone disabled, you're going to sign up for something that is different than what the industry is doing. And it's kind of I feel like we're kind of in this weird middle time where we're very hyper focused on diversity and inclusion, which we should be, obviously. But I think a lot of companies are still, I guess, confused about how to do it, or not comfortable going, which is good in a sense. They're not going full force into like, okay, cool. Well, now we have to include, it's, there's some companies that, it's like when the protests were happening last year, they're like, I immediately, there's a bunch of companies, okay, well, now we need to get black models. I'm like, really? Because you should have been doing that about 40 years ago when you started the company.
Right.
So now that people are getting killed, now you care? Like that doesn't feel genuine. And then there's other companies that are still trying to do that, whether it is people of color, disabled, anyone diverse, but they're trying to be a little bit more careful about it in the sense that like, we want to do this right. So that's why I'm saying we're kind of in this weird middle ground where like, I think if you look at the industry as a whole, I think we do care. I think, from the people I've worked with, the ideas I pitch, the people that sign up to work with me, I think people really do care. It's just a matter of like, how do they express that in a way that isn't tokenizing to a person from a marginalized community? So in a sense, that's kind of a hard question to answer. So I guess, yes, I think the industry is doing a good job, is in the sense that they are trying. Most people are trying. Is it completely diverse? No, I think we still have a long way to go. I think I have answered this question before.
Yeah.
Can we do to actually make change? And I think everything lies internally. It's like, cool, yeah, you can go hire a person in a wheelchair, or a black person or a gay person or whatever to like model in your next campaign. But what does your team look like? Most likely the outdoor company you work for is owned by a rich white man. Yeah. So what does everyone else under that look like? Are you hiring people of color are you hiring a plus size person to write articles about plus size gear? Are you hiring a disabled person to talk about accessibility? I think that's really important, is that people are making their team diverse, because when that happens, then that's when I think when the change will really happen, is when we're making all these different teams from different companies more diverse.
Yeah. Yeah. And changing who has power, right? That's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think probably there aren't a lot of people watching who are necessarily from or in positions of power at big corporations, but like, what do you think for individuals who are watching? Like, is there something that, you would ask of people who are fans of your work or fans of Mappy Hour, if they could take one or two actions right now? Like, do you have any in your head that you're like, this is really what I want to see?
That's a hard question.
Yeah, I know.
It's hard because I think, we see a lot of influencers being like, here's 10 things you can do to help diversify the outdoors. And for me, like, sometimes those things I can't even do. It's like, oh, donate a bunch of money to one of your favorite organizations. If you do have money, great.
Right.
Yes, even $10, whatever, that's fine. And I do that for certain organizations when I can, but like, you can only donate so much money. I'm also the kind of person that I'm like, if I can do something, like if I can, put forth my time, then I'm going to do that. But like what feels like change for me isn't the same thing for everyone. So what I suggest, I guess, is just finding that thing that makes you feel like you are inflicting some sort of change. Yeah. No matter how big or how small. And for me, my thing is like, I'm working on these films right now, and does it feel big? No, because I want to do it. Like, for me, it feels like I'd want to do it anyway. Like, I want to make films. I want to tell stories. That's just me. Like, yeah. But do I feel like I'm making some sort of change? Sometimes, every once in a while I'll get a nice message from someone that says, I watched your film and I feel the same way. I relate to this person. And that's literally why I do it, just to create that human connection. So I think it's a matter of finding what you're good at and using that to make change in a way that's unique to you and that feels genuine.
Yeah, I love that, because we all have different skills and resources and networks and all of that. Yeah. So just to kind of wrap up, and then we'll go to questions. You mentioned a book, you mentioned some more episodes. Like what's next for you?
Yeah, I mean, I want to finish out the year doing my films, and I'm going to release a book, which is going to be 20 years of my work. And I'm going to hike the CDT next year and hopefully make a film. I'm not going to divulge what that looks like, because I got kind of something brewing for that.
Follow at Twerk in the Dirt on Instagram to learn more.
And then I don't know, I kind of really want to release a outdoor cookbook in the next year or so. Because like I said, I love cooking and I cook outdoor. I cook really, really fancy meals when I go camping. So
I would tune into that series if you decide to do some video content around that.
I do have some. You go stock.
You already do. Okay.
Go to my,
I didn't go deep enough.
Yeah, go deep. There's some cooking videos in there where I get kind of. You'll see. You'll just You'll see. Yeah, it's entertaining.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So now I'm just there's a few questions. So start asking them, and then everyone who is watching, if you have questions, pop them in there, and we'll ask them. So, all right, this first one's a little bit long, so I'm just gonna read it. Okay. How do you feel and think about the crossover that's happening between high fashion and the outdoors and the gorpcore trend?
You're talking about the Gucci North Face, right?
Yeah, let's stop there. Let's ask that.
Okay, let's answer that.
Yeah.
Comical.
Yeah.
It's funny because when I finished the PCT and outside online I'd feature my work, there was a comment on the thread of a girl who was like, I work in fashion in New York and this is not fashion. This is not Vogue, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, it was like, it's supposed to be irony. We're literally wearing the same, thing every day and we haven't washed our asses for 2 weeks. Complete irony, calm down. We get it. Go back to your penthouse.
There's backlash from the fashion industry.
Yeah, I was like, calm down. I know I'm not a fashion photographer.
Yeah.
So I just need to say that because the crossover is, I mean, I have a very large appreciation for fashion photography. Even though I'd never want to work in that industry, I love fashion photography. It's was my life when I was a kid. I still love it. It's obscure. It's ridiculous. It has nothing to do with the clothes. It's so absurd, but I love that. There's some really incredible fashion photographers who I love, who I will worship for the rest of my life. I think the crossover is ridiculous in the sense that they're selling sleeping bags for $10,000. They're slapping Gucci on it, and they're charging a shit ton for products that probably are nowhere near as good as some of these cottage companies. So that in itself is, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Privilege maybe? Or, I mean, you have a name like Gucci, you can do that and you can make big bucks on outdoor stuff. It's just, if in a sense, it feels like you're infiltrating our space. Let us have this one thing, Yeah. I just hope it doesn't take any money from any of these little cottage companies who work their asses off that are literally owned by 2 people, I just hope it doesn't infiltrate in that way. Other than that, I love the photography, go for it. But that's the only thing I have to say about that.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting, from a brand perspective, because the outdoor gear marketing has always been about how good the product is, how well it performs. So upping the price because of a logo is just such and it feels very antithetical to what the whole industry has always or traditionally been about.
Yeah, but it's here, look, Alex Honnold shit on this. Let's sell it for $25,000.
Right. You can have this. Yeah. Okay. So, what's that?
People would buy it.
People would buy it. sort of Alex Honnold NFT something.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't totally understand this, but you might. Okay, so this is the part 2 of this same question. Just a few hours ago, Jacquemus presented their collection La Montagne, or the mountain, directly citing hiking as a reference. And does this create more opportunities for you? So this is like an add-on to, yeah, okay. We just stick with the first part of that question.
Yeah, I don't think I understand what's happening.
Okay. Yes, very, very niche. Okay. Sorry, Chelsea, we got the first half answered.
Yeah, I like that first question.
Yeah. Okay, so second question is, how much time did you spend photographing people for Hiker Trash Vogue, and how did you fit that in with all of the miles you had to get in?
It's like, as I would be walking, I would stop because I'd be like, oh, the lighting's great, so I'm gonna wait for the next hiker. Which also I also will take any excuse to take a break. So for me, great, I'll just sit here until someone comes. And usually you already kind of like know who's around, or every once in a while it's a person you haven't seen, but like you kind of like know who's in your bubble. But like a lot of times I'd get to camp and I'd be like, hey, let's have a photo shoot, and then we'd get to like town, we'd have photo shoots there. It's kind of just like when I felt like it. You also just like, I was out there for 5.5 months too. So I just had this like infinite amount of time. So it never felt like work. It never felt like I had to stop and I had to do this. I just wanted to do it. So if I had to stop in the middle of my day, it wasn't like, oh, I have to stop to take a picture. It's like, oh my God, this is like, I want to stop to take this picture, So it was never about feeling like I had to do the work. It's just because I wanted to. And also I knew it was an insanely huge privilege to just be out there and to God, to do what you love for 5.5 months is like the best experience I've ever had,
It's a total dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for questions. I'm going to close with one of my own questions. What's your advice for someone who might want to hike the PCT someday, if you had to offer one piece of advice?
Ooh, that's a good one.
This is for me. I don't know if you picked that, and everyone else watched.
No, I think okay. Yeah. I'd say make less excuses. I think a lot of people get in their head like, oh, like, well, I have this really great apartment, or I've got a car payment, or I have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a partner, or I've got, I guess when like kids get into the mix, maybe that makes it a little bit more dicey. I totally get that. But I think if you have an excuse you can get out of, I say go for it. Because here's something I always said to people on trail while we're on trail. Because we'd get to a town and be like, let's stay in town for a night. And they're like, we have to keep hiking. I was like, in 10 years, are you gonna look back and be happy you went hike? Or are you gonna be happy we stayed in town and like had a great time, like getting beers, having fun, spending time with each other before walking again?
Right.
And I would always ask people that, and they're like, fine, you win again, like you're stupid. Yeah. But I always ask myself that too, to this day. Like I always think about things like, in 15, 20, 25 years, am I gonna be happy I got this done a day sooner, or like went and like had fun, or like went and did something I thought I didn't want to do. I always try to challenge myself in that way and try to surprise myself, keep myself guessing. And I think hiking the PCT still to this day feels like a dream. Like I don't feel like it actually happened, but I'm so grateful I did it. And I'm so happy I drank all that wine with Andrew and said yes. And because I don't know what my life would look like today. I don't think it would be the same. It actually terrifies me to think about what my life would be like if I had not taken a chance and didn't say yes.
Yeah.
So say yes.
That's the perfect thing to end on. So everyone say yes. Go do the thing. Yeah. Thank you so much for spending your time with us and Mappy Hour. And yeah, I'm really excited to just like go deeper on the Instagram and see the new episodes that are coming out of the visual podcast.
Yeah, there's 6. So if you have time, go watch them.
Everyone go watch. I'll send a link out tomorrow to everyone who is registered, so it'll be super easy to find them. And yeah, that's it. And thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully see you all soon.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Good night.